What we're about to dive into is one of the biggest fundamentals in all of math, but it's also one of the simplest. So let's go right into it, shall we? Let's check it out. This equation right here says x plus 5 equals 19. Now, we could solve this one out mentally by looking at it and saying, what number plus 5 equals 19? Well, the number plus 5 that gives us 19 is 14. So you could solve it that way and just say, well, x equals 14. That's using number sense. But there's another way to solve this equation. And before we get into how to solve this equation with that other way, I need to convince you of a couple of very important yet simple ideas. It starts with this. Let's pretend that you have a certain amount of weight of, I don't know, let's say candy in your hands. Any kind of candy you want. And I have that same exact amount of candy. Look at it, just weighing down my hands. Can't wait to dig into it. Whatever kind of candy, you and I have the same amount. And each of us, because we can't just hold candy in our hands without eating it, eat the same exact weight of candy. You lose the same amount, I lose the same amount. Naturally, if I were to ask the question, how much weight of candy remains in your hands and in mine, we'd have the same exact amount, right? That is a key idea called the subtraction property of equality. And I'm sure you weren't thinking of that. Neither would I be if I was eating candy. But it basically says this: if you and I have the same equal amount and we each take away the same amount, we end up with the same amount. So let's look at this mathematically. Let's say that each of us, and I'll kind of do this off to the side, have 9 plus 4 is what you have. So 9 of some kind of candy plus 4 of another kind of candy. And I have a total of 13 pieces of candy. Well, we each have the same amount, right? Let's see, we each eat 2 pieces of candy, which means that I'm going to take away 2 from both sides of this equation. And when I take away 2 from both sides of the equation, and we do the math on this side, I get 9 plus 4 is 13, minus 2. And then on the right side of the equation, I still have 13 minus 2, and we see, hey, they're equal amounts, or 11 equals 11. The whole point is, if you take away the same amount from each side of an equation that is true, you will end up with a true equation. So how does that come into play here? Well, if we look at this equation, we already saw that one way to solve it was to use mental math. But there is another very important way. We are going to undo the operation that is being done to x. Currently, we are adding 5 to x. What could we do to undo plus 5? What's the opposite of adding? Taking away or subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 5 from each side of the equation. You cannot just subtract 5 to the one side and say, you know what, I'm going to eliminate the 5. No, because now we've unbalanced the equation. It would be like only subtracting 2 from this side and somehow expecting the equation to be the same. Or you and I having the same amount of candy and I eat 2 pieces and expect that even though you haven't eaten any, we still somehow have the same amount. So whatever I do to one side of an equation, I must do to the other to balance out the equality, right? So I have taken 5 pieces away from here. We now very simply simplify both sides. Adding 5 and then subtracting 5 undoes the addition of 5. That number becomes 0, 5 minus 5. It leaves the left-hand side with x. Notice I'm just doing calculations on the left-hand side only. Then on the right-hand side, I simplify and I do 19 minus 5. I'm treating this as a separate thought. I'm just focused now on subtracting 5 from 19, which is 14. Awesome, which is the same answer we would have gotten. How do we check our answer? In the original equation, we had that x plus 5 equals 19. My solution is x equals 14. I can take that number and evaluate it in for x. And sure enough, 14 plus 5 is equal to 19. And that whole thing right there that we just did is a check. Very, very cool stuff.